JD Vance, of course, the Vice President. Have a listen. He's been very, very strong on this whole issue of free speech, in particular, free speech outside America, such as here. We want here on JD's radar. Here he is talking the other side.
Yes, ma'am. In his remarks at the Munich Security Conference, Vice President Vance condemned free speech violations in the UK, particularly. Could you respond? What is your message?
I have an idea. We have the man right here. Come on. Let's go, JD. We're putting you on stage.
Great. Yeah, look, I said what I said, which is that we do have, of course, a special relationship with our friends in the UK and also with some of our European allies, but we also know that there have been infringements on free speech that actually affect not just the British. Of course, what the British do in their own country is up to them, but also affect American technology companies and by extension American citizens. So
Britain has just endured one of its most humiliating diplomatic episodes in years. The United States, our supposed closest ally, has officially labelled Britain authoritarian, not concerning or troubled, but outright authoritarian, and the sting is magnified by timing. With the report landing, while America's incoming Vice President JD Vance was staying as a guest in the Foreign Secretary's home, a political equivalent of inviting a friend to dinner only for them to publicly shame you in front of the entire street before dessert. Washington didn't soften the blow or raise concerns behind closed doors, instead formalising them in a human rights report visible to every government, journalist and watchdog on the planet, making this not a quiet warning but a global broadcast of Britain's failures on the world stage. And if British politics like this matters to you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to Dark Britain, since over 98% of viewers watch without hitting follow, even though subscribing is completely free.
West, the transatlantic relationship, our NATO allies, certainly the United States under the Biden administration, got a little too comfortable with censoring rather than engaging with a diverse array of opinions. So that's been my view. Obviously, I've raised some criticism and concerns about our friends on this side of the Atlantic, but the thing that I'd say to the people of England or to anybody else, to David, is many of the things that I worry most about were happening in the United States from 2020 to 2024. I just don't want other countries to follow us down what I think was a very dark path.
This wasn't some off-the-cuff insult or diplomatic slip. It was a deliberate strike at the heart of Britain's democratic credibility. While JD Vance politely sipped tea in the English countryside, his own government was quietly issuing a stark warning that Britain's democratic institutions are drifting into dangerous territory. The trigger was clear: free speech. Washington accused Starmer's government of imposing sweeping restrictions on expression at alarming speed, citing the heavy-handed response to the Southport riots as the very first example. Instead of tolerating open debate, Starmer's team pressured social media companies, including US-based platforms, to remove posts they labelled as misinformation. To Washington, this crossed a red line, amounting to state-backed censorship, the exact kind of conduct Britain once lectured other nations about. The language used, grievous, signals that allies now see Britain not as making isolated mistakes, but as sliding towards systemic abuse.
The administration is so forthright in talking about these issues, no matter who's in the room. But the question begs, Brad, is he right?
I think he's absolutely right about the United Kingdom and their sad decline in freedom of speech and freedom of press. I mean, you have thousands of people who've been arrested over the years because of things they posted on social media. That is not a free country. That is a kind of modern dystopia, an authoritarian state where the government can roll up with the authorities to come get you because they don't like what you have to say. It is sad to see that happen to one of our greatest allies, a beautiful nation with a long history and legacy as a beacon of freedom in the West. And I also appreciate JD Vance calling them out for it. But honestly, it will have to come from within. Their own citizens will have to stop standing for it, stop standing for the censorship, stop standing for the overreach, for the absurd policing. You see video after video where the police roll up on somebody for a crude joke that they posted online, or for asking someone, why don't you speak English, or any other sort of thing that's just fundamentally not a police.
But the criticism didn't stop there. America also flagged new public space protection orders that allow police to criminalize even silent prayer in certain areas. Imagine being fined or arrested simply for standing quietly with your own thoughts. Symbolism so stark that Washington described it as edging toward policing belief itself. Then came the Online Safety Act, forcing adults to verify their age before accessing websites, while opening the door for state access to encrypted messages, meaning your online identity is no longer private and your personal conversations may no longer be beyond government reach. If censorship had already set alarm bells ringing in Washington, the next issue tipped concern into outright condemnation: Britain's failure to confront a surge in anti-Semitism. Since late 2023, Jewish communities have faced hostility unseen in decades, with examples so disturbing they read like a human rights dossier. Staff at a London kosher shop fighting off a knife-wielding attacker, and in Yorkshire, a university chaplain and his family driven from their home by death. Threats over his service in the Israeli Defense Forces. These aren't abstract figures or talking points. They are ordinary families living in fear because of their faith. And for the United States, calling this out so explicitly signals that Washington sees it as not just a domestic failure, but a human rights and national security issue with global implications. And then came the twist. While enjoying British hospitality, JD Vance delivered what amounted to a diplomatic intervention, warning that America had made catastrophic free speech mistakes between 2020 and 2024, and that Britain was now repeating those errors on an even larger scale, like a dinner. Guest calmly telling you you're reenacting their worst regrets, all while still helping themselves to your food.
And it will last for a very, very long time. Well, no, I mean, certainly we wouldn't want to reach across US citizens, and we don't, and that's absolutely right. But in relation to free speech in the UK, I'm very proud of our history there.
Faced with this barrage of criticism, you might expect the British Prime Minister to respond with confidence and authority. Instead, Starmer delivered a display so feeble it bordered on humiliating. When pressed on free speech, he didn't sound like a leader defending a fundamental right. He sounded like an anxious student fumbling through an oral exam. At a moment when Britain needed clarity and strength, he projected hesitation and doubt. By contrast, the American report showed no such restraint. Avoiding diplomatic euphemisms and spelling things out plainly, Britain now labours under severe restrictions on freedom of expression, and the government has been inconsistent in holding officials accountable for abuses. In a diplomatic world where even criticism is usually padded with courtesy, that level of bluntness is incendiary. The underlying message is stark. Washington believes Britain no longer knows where it stands, or worse, no longer cares.
Opposed to lost, but we got along with them also. We have a very good relationship with.
And here lies the real danger. Once a country is formally labelled authoritarian, the damage is painfully difficult to undo. Trust begins to erode, quietly at first, but with alarming speed. Trade negotiations become harder, intelligence sharing slows, military cooperation is quietly re-evaluated, and diplomatic talks turn colder. Allies start asking whether Britain is still the reliable partner they once trusted, or whether it has become unpredictable, even untrustworthy. This kind of decay doesn't arrive with dramatic explosions. It is slow, subtle and corrosive, and once it takes hold, it almost never reverses. The longer Britain refuses to change course, the closer it drifts toward genuine isolation. Perhaps the most unsettling reality is this: it may only be the beginning. If the government continues expanding surveillance powers, restricting speech, and enforcing hate crime laws selectively, reports like this won't end, they will multiply, each carrying more weight than the last. Today, it is the United States sounding the alarm. Tomorrow, it could be Brussels, Ottawa, Canberra, or Tokyo. Once that chorus of allies grows louder, it becomes impossible to ignore, let alone silence. The question now confronting every citizen is stark and unavoidable. Are we witnessing a temporary rough chapter in Britain's democratic story, or the real-time dismantling of democratic Britain itself? For now, people can still debate, protest, and question, but even that cannot be assumed forever. Rights surrendered are rarely returned without a struggle, and history shows that once a government grows comfortable silencing voices, it seldom stops at the first step. That is the core of the crisis. Britain, once held up as a beacon of democracy, is now being treated as a cautionary tale. America is no longer applauding us, it is warning the rest of the world. And that shift from respect to alarm should jolt every citizen awake. Because if this doesn't trigger concern, what possibly will? When does silence turn into complicity? When do people realise that their inheritance, the freedoms generations fought, bled, and died for, is being squandered like loose change by careless leaders? The real question is unavoidable. Have we already crossed the line into authoritarianism, or are we simply navigating turbulence in democracy's long story? Is this a necessary wake-up call, or the final warning before freedom slips away quietly and without drama? History will eventually judge, but only if people today are willing to question and act. Share your thoughts in the comments below, because this debate is no longer abstract or academic, it is unfolding right now, in plain sight of the world. And while we still have the ability to speak freely, your voice has never mattered more. The clock is ticking, and the issue is no longer whether Britain's democratic image has been damaged, but whether it can still be rescued. If you want to stay informed as this story develops, make sure you subscribe, because from this point forward, every development matters, and we'll be following every single one. Britain, once the torchbearer of democracy, is now a warning sign. America no longer praises us, it warns the world, and this shift from admiration to alarm should wake every citizen, because if it doesn't, what will? At what point does silence become complicity? When do people realise that the freedoms generations fought and died for are being spent like spare change by careless leaders? Have we already crossed into authoritarianism? Or is this just turbulence in the story of democracy? Is this a wake-up call or the final warning before freedom slips quietly away? History will decide, but only if we are willing to ask hard questions and act. This debate is no longer theoretical, it is happening now, in full view of the world. While we still have the chance to speak freely, your voice matters more than ever. The clock is ticking, and the question is no longer whether Britain's democratic image is damaged, but whether it can still be saved. Stay tuned, because every development matters, and we'll be covering each one as it unfolds.